Hey guys, hey, this is Anne Marie, and we are back in my bathroom today because I have to run an errand and I wanted to get this off my chest because I've been thinking about it a lot over the last couple of days. And you guys know I did a video about whiteness, white supremacy, and white women, and it went semi-viral, lots and lots of views of that video. And I also did a video about whiteness, white supremacy, and immigrants, non-Black Americans in the workplace, and lots of views and comments on that. And what I noticed in both videos is that, a lot of people came into the comments and they spoke about their own experiences dealing with these different groups of people. And they, some of them use it as an opportunity to really pile on and say, very strongly how they felt. Comments that I thought were just outright sexist or otherwise problematic have already been removed. Had to remove a lot of people of late, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I want to just be clear before I get to the point of this, that I made this channel because I wanted primarily to talk about the issues that I notice in HR and how they negatively impact workers generally, and specifically Black people and people of color, especially Black women. And because it was clear to me when I worked in HR that people did not really understand how HR worked and why HR exists, and that people did not understand a lot of times when they were being mistreated, including being discriminated against at work, that in fact it was discrimination at the root of what was going on, and also that HR was not going to help them to solve the problem. So I decided to create a business to help people understand their workplace rights, and also to teach people how to cash out of discriminatory work environments, because I know for a fact that when confronted with these issues the right way in many, many workplaces, employers will in fact pay employees to leave in order to limit their liability, okay? And that people can then take that money and finance other things, including a move abroad like I did. So I wanted more people to know about this and know there was an option and know how to do it, which is why I created this channel. So this is the anti-HR channel, and it was created specifically to educate employees about their workplace rights and how to assert their workplace rights when they believe their workplace rights are being violated, and how to cash out of discriminatory hostile work environments if they believe that they are in one and they have the steps and strategies and understanding of how to do that. And that's what I teach people to do. And I also provide my services to employees on a consulting basis to do those very things. And I have, resources, ebooks, other things to educate employees about their workplace rights. So of course, if that's of interest to you, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, tell a friend, and give constructive comments. Emphasis on the word constructive. Okay. So that being said, I did these two videos and they've, performed quite well, and people have really engaged with them, and that makes me happy. But one of the things I noticed is that in reading the comments, and I do read all the comments, I don't always have time to answer all of them, but I do try to read them all. Because I do moderate my area, because I want it to be a place that people are allowed to talk about their thoughts and even share their experiences, but do so constructively, not attack each other and not attack me, and not spread misinformation, because that's a huge issue right now on social media, is misinformation. So if someone is spreading information that's false, and that I believe that they know what they're saying is false, or maybe they just fervently believe it, but I know it's not accurate, more likely than not, I'm just going to remove their comment. Or if they do so in a way that I think is problematic, I'm going to remove them, because I don't have time to be arguing with people on the internet, right? And that's my choice of how I choose to manage my platform. It's okay if you don't like it, but that's the way it is. But I did notice in the comments that people were talking a lot about, white women and immigrants. And, a lot of people used it as an opportunity to bash those two groups vigorously, right? Which is really not what this forum is for, but a lot of people use the comments to do that. And some people just share their experiences, which are valid, about the problematic interactions they've had with people in these groups. And I've had them too, right? And I've tried to share them, but not share them in a way that's attacking anybody. That's just based on facts and my experiences, right? And I would encourage others to do the same thing. calling people hateful and witches and evil and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, we're all talking about human beings, and we all are human beings. And the minute you start dehumanizing any group of people, opens the door to lots of other things that I think are problematic. So, govern your words is what I'm saying, because we don't like it when it's done to us. We shouldn't do it to anyone else. But what I noticed in the comments was that nobody mentioned the number one reason for a lot of the things that we experience. And, around it all is the structure of whiteness and white supremacy. And I've tried to make that clear. And I've tried to talk about how all of these groups are simply tools of that structure. And that the things that we often see people doing are because of their desire for either proximity to, more than likely, their desire for proximity to whiteness, and to ensure that, when stuff pops off, it doesn't impact them, or it impacts them as little as possible. But what we didn't talk about, and I haven't talked about, what I noticed no one really brought up in the comments. Everyone got busy on going after the individuals I mentioned in these groups, but no one got to talking about white men. Actually, some people said, use the opportunity to praise white men, cape for white men. And I have shared my experience with white men, and I've had problematic relationships with white men. I'm going to talk about them today. And I've had good experiences with white men. And I explained why I felt in the video that I had not been as targeted by white men as I have been throughout my professional career by white women. I'm going to talk a little bit about that too today. But I think it's time for us to talk about white men, because white men are the not just who created that concept of whiteness and the structure of white supremacy, but these are the individuals for whom this structure was built and for whom this structure ensures success at all times, right? The structure was built for white wealthy men, right? But today, if you're a white male, regardless of your socioeconomic status, you have a leg up in society that nobody else has. And it shows up in the workplace all day, all the time, in every aspect. I've talked about the way that they receive preference even at entry level of a job where they have done nothing. They have earned nothing. They're just entry level. They're new, just like everybody else. And yet they can come into a company and make more money, right? Simply because they're white and male. And there's a belief, a deeply embedded belief across society, women, everyone, including people of color and Black people, that they're better, smarter, faster. So when they get hired, they get top dollar. And I don't care who the hirer is, they get top dollar. And they demand top dollar. They've been socialized and taught that they deserve top dollar, whether they have actually earned it or not, whether they deserve it or not, whether they have the training or anything, they expect it. Even though they may not always get it, but they expect it. And they definitely ask for it. Because I've had some of my toughest negotiations around salary when I was a professional doing this stuff for a living with white men, because they always want the most money. And I had to explain to some of them in my career why they didn't deserve to have it. But I digress. But what I found interesting in the comments is that very few people talked, if anyone actually pointed out that the biggest problem is them. And I'm compelled to talk about them today because I see, their handiwork in what's going on in our political discourse now, that a Black woman is more likely than not going to be the Democratic nominee for president. And I want to talk a little bit about them and how they do things and how they move whiteness forward, sometimes without you even seeing their fingerprints on it, right? But at the end of the day, they are the people for whom this system was created, and they are the people for whom the system insists remain at the top of the pyramid. And yet so many of us are so wedded to proximity to them, not just white women, not just immigrants, Black people, Black American people, Black women, right? That we don't even mention them. Unless they do some overt messy crap, we don't even talk about the stuff that they do, but we need to. So I'm going to tell you a little story. When I was working as a legal secretary at a federal agency that I will not name, my direct supervisor was a white man, older white gentleman, lovely man. Did a lot for me in my career, encouraged me to become an attorney. I think I told that story in another video. But in that office was also another white male lawyer, who was from North Carolina, from the South. And he reported directly to my supervisor. And he was the only attorney in the suite who reported directly to my supervisor. All the other attorneys who worked in the suite worked in that suite, but they reported to other people. They worked for other sections, but this person reported directly to my supervisor. But I was not his assistant. I was my supervisor's assistant. And so if he needed help from me, he had to ask my boss, right? But he thought in the beginning that he could tell me what to do too, because, you know, he's a white man working in the suite and he's an older white guy, middle-aged white guy. But he was not like the equivalent of kind of the most junior attorney in the suite, right? The other guys were in their careers longer. Some of them actually had the title of senior attorney. And those guys, I had no problem with, and they had no problem with me. And I'm gonna get to why I believe that was. But the guy who was the equivalent of the junior associate was the one who wanted to constantly come and tell me what to do and tell me I need to do this and I need to do that. And there were many times when I had to tell him I couldn't do the thing he was asking me for because I had other things that my boss wanted me to get to. And, you know, so what he started doing was, or tried to do, was engage in a undermining campaign, right? And he would go around to some of the other attorneys, which he thought I didn't know, but I knew. I found out because my boss told me some of the stuff he said to him. And he would badmouth me. And one of the other attorneys eventually became a really good friend of mine, even after I left the company. So I also learned things from talking to him. But he would say things about me and imply that I was lazy. And he said these things also to the woman who I eventually had problems with, and she ended up getting moved out of the suite for messing with me. But none of the other ones really paid him any attention because their position was that wasn't their experience with me. But she tried to join the bandwagon with him and ended up getting sent to another suite. But what he did was he didn't come at me directly. He used other people to come for me, right? And that is an MO of a lot of white men, right? They don't want to be accused of being racist, even though they're motivated by racism. And just like white women, the one thing they cannot abide, many of them, is a black person who treats them like an equal. And I, even though I was a legal secretary, treated him like an equal. And he didn't like that. I think it riled up all his Southern gentleman, ancestry. And he did not like me because I did not chuck and jive. I didn't apologize when I said no. I just said I can't do it. And that was it. And he didn't like that. And I know all of this because when he tried to say negative things about me during my review, and my boss, removed pretty much most everything that he said. But we had a conversation about it. And my boss, said to me what some of the things that he had said about me, and basically that he didn't think I was friendly and blah, blah, blah. And I basically was why do I need to be friendly? If I'm doing my work, why do I need to be friendly? And my boss was kind of like, you have a point. I said, if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, why do I have to be especially friendly to him to tell him no? If the answer is no and I can't do something, do you want me to not do something you asked me to do for him? So instead of coming at me directly, he went to other people to try to get them to come after me, right? By making allegations, asking him, have you ever noticed this? Or do you notice that? Or are you having this problem with her? And blah, blah, blah. And he did the same thing with my boss. But my boss, to his credit, was also a white man, but who valued me because of what I did for him. I never, kid myself that he would not have done these things if I was not of value to him, significant value to him. Shut that stuff down. But for the remainder of the time that I worked there, I did as little as possible for him. Not more, less, because I just wanted him to know. And I also made comments to make sure he knew that I knew that he had, gone to people and said these things. And anything he needed me to do after that, he had to come through my boss to get me to do it. I doubled down. I didn't change anything that I was doing. Instead, I actually doubled down because my thing was, you can go to the secretarial pool and get it done if I'm not doing it fast enough for you. And since you want to go talk mess about me, to the secretarial pool you will go. Unless my boss tells me I have to do it for you, I'm not doing it. I'm busy. Where you're concerned, I remain busy all the time, right? And that's how I dealt with him. But the point I'm making is that a lot of times white people, and especially white men, use other people to go after people, right? And they often primarily use white women to do the dirty work, especially in the workplace and elsewhere. So as I've been looking at comments about the Democratic presidential nominee, the expected to be, because until she actually is, I'm going to, I won't be surprised they try to pull something between now and the convention, because Republicans seem really, really scared of this woman, which I didn't expect because she ran in 2020. So I don't know, but they're terrified. And you can tell in the narratives that they're putting out there. But one of the narratives that they're putting out there is about her past and her sex life and her relationship with the former mayor of San Francisco, and whether or not she had a relationship with him. And honestly, I don't care whether she did. I don't care about her personal life. I don't care about her past sex life. I don't care. I care about whether or not she can help us save America from Project 2025 and the Orange Man. I don't care about nothing else. Because I care about being able to be on this platform and say what I want to say and speak my mind come January 2025, come this time next year, 2025. That's what my mind is on. I don't care nothing about her sex life, especially when it's coming from people who are supporting a man with 34 felonies who was proven to pay off a porn star who he apparently was having sex with without a condom while he was married to his wife. So I find anyone that's defending that person and talking about somebody else's sex life to be a hypocrite. But I noticed that a lot of people who are bringing these things, who obviously a lot of them are bots, Russian bots. And, we could have a whole conversation about why Russia wants Donald Trump back in the White House so badly, why he's been meeting with intermediaries who are known to have relationships with the president of Russia in his house in Florida that the press is not even talking about. But I won't get into all of that, right? But it's very clear, just as in 2016, that Russia's working overtime to try to help Trump win this election. And so some of the people making the comments are clearly not even real people, but some of them actually are. And it's a lot of women. And I noticed someone had done a thing on Threads about this one woman who was saying really nasty things about, the vice president and all these different things. And it was a white woman. And I wasn't surprised because I knew that to say the worst things, they'll use women, white women especially, and black women if they can get them to. And a lot of black women, some of them are real people, some of them aren't. But some black women are also getting onto the she's not black or she's not black enough bandwagon. And I've had to remove some of them from my platform because I'm not going to hear any of that either. The woman's father is a black man from Jamaica. He was an economics professor at Stanford for many, many years, and he's a black man. So you don't have to like her. But if Barack Obama was black enough for you, then she should be too. And so I don't want to hear it. But a lot of them are trying to come for her sex life, talk about her sex life, despite the fact that their cult leader is also, allegedly named multiple times in the Jeffrey Epstein diary. And I don't even want to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, but you can Google Jeffrey Epstein, who was one of Trump's pals. And this is a known fact. I've been talking to people about Jeffrey Epstein long before he died, before he was suicided, before the state actually came after him. I read an article about him many, many years before all of those things broke in Vanity Fair. They were the first ones to really talk about him. And even then, Trump was mentioned as one of his friends. So this is not a new development, as well as Bill Clinton. I'm not going to pretend he was one of his friends too, but Bill Clinton isn't running for office anymore. And all of this stuff came out after Clinton left office. But I can't imagine that the Republican Party would have let him live that down if he had been running for president and his name was associated with this man. And they shouldn't. Just like they came for the Prince of England, but no one is talking about Trump's relationship with him. But they want to talk about Kamala's sex life. I find that to be hypocritical. But I'm noticing that white men are coming on there too. They're showing their colors. But a lot of them, the people who are saying the worst things, are women. And I am not fooled to believe that the people putting the words into their mouths are white men, right? Or they're saying it in their desire to be proximate to them, as usual. But I think a lot of us don't talk about white men. We don't talk about Kevin and Kyle and Brad and Travis. But we love to talk about Becky and Karen, right? And I think you have to understand that all of them are part of the problem, and the ones that the system was designed to protect and to keep propped up are white men, right? So when people say, well, you're voting for this person, same thing they said when Barack Obama was running for president, you're voting for this person only because they're black. I say you're absolutely correct. Because the last 44, 45 of them were all white men, and you weren't concerned then that it was about race, but it's always been about race. Why do white people vote for all those people? Because they're white. And they're male. And they think that's the most proximate thing, right, to the best thing since sliced bread to them. And so they don't care anything about their qualifications. They just care that they're white and they're male, right? And I will also add that America has shown us over and over again that the only time they're willing to not vote for a white male is when the country is on the brink of disaster. We were on the brink of an economic depression in 2008, and Barack Obama was elected, and he pulled America's ass out of that fire. And now we're on the brink of something even worse. We're on the brink of losing democracy itself. And if you read Project 2025 and you understand the relationships of many of the people who helped write it to the Trump administration, many of them were in the Trump administration and are expected to be back in the Trump administration if he gets back into office, then you understand that this is a thing that is going to happen if he's reelected, right? So if you read that document, you will understand that we are on the brink of something even worse than an economic depression, right? And so the only reason why I think America might consider hiring another black person for this job is because they always want us to save them. We are always useful to them when they need someone to save them. It's the same in the workplace. Just about every job I ever had before I got off the plantation was me coming in to either fix a problem or correct a problem or create something for them that they didn't have, that they didn't know how to create for themselves. And as soon as I either finished doing it or I had to call them out for things that they were doing wrong in the process, they would come for me. But I never kidded myself that they hired me just because I was the best, though I was. It was because they didn't know how to fix something and they wanted me to fix them. They love to bring black women through the door, especially to save their behinds, right? And so that if it don't work out, who are they going to blame? Not all the white people that are going to still vote for the orange man with 34 felonies. They're not going to blame them. They're going to try to blame the candidate, and they're going to try to blame us. And I just hope we don't fall for that if such a thing should happen. But if such a thing should happen, as in she doesn't win, right? Or Democrat doesn't win, the calamity that is going to come upon us is going to come upon us all, right? Well, not me, because I don't live in the United States anymore, but my family lives there. So I very much care about what happens and what the outcome of this is. And I do like to come from time to time and spend time, and I won't be able to do that, right? I would not be able to come back. I wouldn't feel safe coming back if the things that they're planning to institute, they actually do institute. And I believe they have every intention of doing so. And now they have a blueprint for doing it. They didn't know how to do it the first time. When he came into office, I don't think Donald Trump even expected to win. He didn't the first time. He didn't expect to win. He came in with people who had no clue about how the government structure worked and how to institute the things they wanted to institute. But now they know, and they've written a blueprint. The dumbest thing they did was writing the thing down, but they wrote it down. They wrote it down, and they have every intention of putting it into place. And so as people make decisions, I suggest that they go read that document and stop worrying about whether she's black enough. There's no question she's qualified. She's a former senator, former attorney general, and the vice president of the United States. They're going to throw everything they can at the Democratic candidate, whoever they may be, whether it's her or someone else. But people need to remember what you're voting against this time and what you're trying to save yourselves and your kids from. But back to white men. So, the Project 2025 was primarily written by white men. And it was written to institute a white supremacist, white heterosexual, patriarchal society. Like Handmaid's Tale patriarchal society, right? And that's the whole point, because the concern is that they are no longer, have at the top of the pyramid. The white population in the U.S. is shrinking, which is why they want to deport all these people who they need to advance their economy. But that's a whole other conversation. But the reason why they're willing to do all those things is their fear of being outnumbered. One of the biggest fears that white men have is that all of these people that they've oppressed for all this time will rise up against them. And due to them, what they have done to all of us for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years. Whether that is actually going to happen, or I don't think it would. Because, Black people, if that was the case, Black people be rising up all over the place. We never have done that. We just want to be allowed to live our lives in peace and not have the police kill us and not be put in jail for stuff we don't need to be put in jail for, and asked to be equal citizens. And the thing they don't want ever is equality. The reason they hate DEI is not because they have a problem with the D or the I, they have a problem with the E. They don't want equity. White men don't want equity, and they don't want it for us. They don't want it for white women. They don't want it for anybody but themselves. They want to be at the top of the pyramid. They may use other people for their agenda, but never misunderstand who this system was created to advance and whose interest it's created to advance. And I don't care how nice that white man is for you is to you in the office. I've had many of them be kind to me over the years, but I have never lost sight of what the system is about, right? And that the system was created for them. And I notice a lot of us, especially Black women, deifying them, especially since Scandal. Everybody want to be an Olivia. Everybody's looking for their fits. I call it the Scandal effect. So we love to vilify white women, but we don't talk about the white men and their role in all of this. Because some of us, want to have one. Well, as someone who's had one, more than one, they're just like any other type of man. Men are men, right? Except most of them have white supremacist tendencies because they were raised in the United States to believe that they're supposed to be at the top of the pile and nobody's supposed to question it. And so if you're honest, those of us who've been in relationships, especially the American ones, if you're honest with yourself, right, you will realize that that's the truth. Okay, that's been my experience. And I've observed it with other people, even people that wouldn't admit that it was a thing, right? But I don't deify them. This is not me saying people shouldn't date interracially. Date whoever you want, date who you love, do you, right? But understand that you're up against a system. It's not about individual people. It's about a system, and a system that was designed to operate in a specific way and to advance the interests of specific people. And the people it's really designed to advance are wealthy white men, the most. But then the rest of them get to take advantage of that as well, right? And so the system is designed to advance their interests and to keep us divided and pitted against each other so that their interests can more easily be advanced. And so we've got to recognize the game and understand that we're all being played. We're all being played. And the sad thing is that white women don't see it. They are so programmed to advance their race over their gender. That is why they are willing to sacrifice themselves as well as everyone else in service of whiteness, white supremacy, and white proximity, white males proximity. But the game is literally, in my opinion, about economics and about class warfare more than anything else. The difference is that the wealthy, rich white people figured out a long time ago that the best way to advance themselves was to keep us divided, to keep the poor and the other races dividing and fighting against each other. And we've been doing their bidding since the beginning of the Republic. And we continue to do it. And it's intended to be that way. They use the media that they own to do it. They use the social media that they also own to do it, right? And we let them do it because we act like we don't understand the game, no matter how obvious it is at this point, because they're not even hiding their hand no more, right? And so people got to really wake up to the reality that The architects of this are white men. And so in the workplace, a lot of times they don't come for you directly, but they send other people to do it. They'll be nice to you, smile in your face, all of that, but they'll send other people to do it, right? They'll send someone else as the messenger, right? And some of them will come at you directly if they feel directly threatened by you. There is nothing more dangerous than a white man that feels threatened. And we've seen this in society with the mass shootings and the rapes and the serial killers and the whatever. There is nothing more dangerous than one of them that has a bone to pick, right? But most of the time in the workplace, they're not going to come at you directly. They're going to send other people. They're going to send a white woman. They're going to send black people. They're going to send non-people of color. And all of these people will do their bidding because of their desire for proximity and acceptance. All of us will do it. Not just the white women, not just the immigrants, all of us do it. And if you think back across your career, sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it. You don't even realize you're being used, but you are being used, right? They don't come at you always directly. They will send other people to do it. But never make the mistake of thinking that they think of you as any more of an equal than Becky or Karen does. Don't make that mistake. And I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying this is a collective issue. But in the workplace, it's very obvious. I mean, who's running the majority of these companies? Who's the president? Who's the CEO? Who's the majority of the management team? Right, who is it? And historically, they've hired white women. They've put them in positions of authority lots of times so that they could claim that they have minorities running their business so that they could get small business dollars and dollars reserved for affirmative action, because white women are we're the biggest beneficiaries of affirmative action, right? And that's just a fact. And we didn't even see that that's what they were doing. They would hire the white women. They're not hiring people of color and black people first. They're hiring white women. And the first successful lawsuits brought about affirmative action were brought on behalf of white women, not black people. We don't know that either, including the lawsuits to overturn affirmative action, white women, because they're so entitled. White women, always. They use the affirmative action laws to be able to get into these corporate spaces and be put in leadership positions. But then they talk about it as if it's benefiting us more than it's benefiting their own race, but it's benefiting them, right? And so, in the workplace, what I've seen play out a lot of times in dealing with white men is that white men tend to favor two types of black women. The one I call the mammy and the one I call sapphire. So either the black woman who reminds them of their mom or gives them maternal vibes, or the one they want to have sex with. I'm just being blunt. Right? And those are the two they often favor. I was often Sapphire. That was the one, because I was young and I was pretty, right? And so lots of them had crushes on me in the office. They liked me. They liked looking at me, right? And I didn't always recognize all this till I was a little bit older. But some of the reasons why they were so nice to me was because they liked looking at me. And I was smart and I was competent, right? And I also noticed that some of the women that they were really nice to and really liked a lot were also women that reminded them of their mama or treated them like they were their kids. And they liked that mess too. The ones that fall in between that didn't always fare so well. And I witnessed that as well. If you were assertive and competent and whatever, and you weren't falling into one of them categories, they don't like you so much, and they're more to try to get rid of you, right? And so I'm not letting anybody off the hook. I'm not letting us as black women off the hook. I'm getting the black men next in the next video. Don't worry, they're next. I'm not letting any of us off the hook because we all play roles in the workplace to advance whiteness and white supremacy. But I feel it was time for me to talk about Kevin, Brad, Travis, and Kyle, because I really noticed in the comments that no one was mentioning them. Everyone was happy to vilify, the immigrants. They're happy to vilify white women, but no one's talking about them. That's how well they've been playing the game. That they're almost an afterthought. They're almost an afterthought in these comments, and they shouldn't be, because they're the architects of all of this. And they are who benefit from this more than any other group. So when we're talking about whiteness and white supremacy and how it shows up at work, we can't overlook them. We cannot overlook them. And the reason that they don't have to be as overt is because everybody is acting in favor of their advancement and their interests at all times. So they don't have to do as much because they got everybody else acting on their behalf to ensure their positions, right? Because when you get in there, you got to make sure you get along with them. You might not get along with Becky and Karen, but you got to make sure you get along with Brad, Travis, and Kyle, or you ain't going to last very long at all, right? And so it's very clear to me who's gaming the system the most, but a lot of us don't seem to be noticing it, and I think we need to. We need to pay attention. They own the table. They own the chairs, they own the vases, they own everything around the table. And they're the ones that decide who gets to sit there and who doesn't, unless you build your own. Right? And all of us are up there fighting for pieces of the table. But we never talk about who built the table, who owns the table, who's been controlling the table all along, and all the games that they're playing with all of us. And how the system continues to benefit them first and foremost. The wealthy the most, but even the average person, the average regular ones, they still come out of this system the best from a cumulative perspective. Now, are there outliers, individuals who might not? But overall, they do. Overall, they do. Because when they come through the door, everybody just assumes that they know what they're talking about, even though sometimes you listen to them and you know they don't know nothing they're talking about. Right? They just speak with their chest and with authority, even when they don't know what they're talking about. Some of them can be the most mediocre because they don't have to prove anything. They don't have to prove anything. Look at George Bush. He was a C student at Harvard. How did he get into Harvard? Because his daddy went there, his granddaddy went there, his great-great-granddaddy went there, right? But people love to talk about the DEI people and the affirmative action students, but those students have to bust their ass, have the best grades, and have the best SAT scores to get in. The George Bushes of the world. Barack Obama, I promise you, didn't get in because he was dumb. He got into Harvard because he was one of the best. George Bush, on the other hand, got in because his daddy went there. But nobody talks about him. They barely talk about that. But they love to call us, affirmative action beneficiaries and DEI hires. But we don't get in the door unless we are the best. They get to be mediocre. And of all of the mediocrity, the Brads, the Kyles, the Kevins, the Travises of this world get to be the most mediocre. Even white women have to prove more to get into the door than they do. But they get to get in and no one even questions it. But they get to question everybody else's credentials and do. They're all the talking heads on TV every day running their mouths. And then when you find out how they got their job, you find out that they're related to somebody, somebody's nephew, somebody's son, right? The governors of most of these states, all of them. Who's their daddy? Who's their uncle? Who's their cousin? That's their game. And nobody talks about it. We go after each other. We go after each other with a vengeance. We don't talk about them enough. And we need to. We need to pay attention because we're all getting played. Pay attention to the game. Pay attention to how things happen in your workplace. Because a lot of us think it's Becky and Karen when it's Kyle and Kevin who sent them. Right? It might be them pulling the trigger, but Kyle and Kevin loaded the gun and put it in their hands and told them to go forth and do. Right? And so we need to understand that even when the slave mistress was being super brutal, on whose behest was she doing it? And I just, I had to say something because I just noticed that nobody's mentioning them. It's almost like they're getting a pass, and they should never get a pass. We don't talk about them enough. We need to talk about them more. And we need to pay attention in our workplaces to how they move. Because as I explained, they don't move the way their women do. They're too smart for that. They've been playing the game longer. They use other people to do the dirty work for them a lot. They use other people. And so we need to pay attention to what is happening in the workplace and what is happening in the larger society and pay attention to the fingerprints because the fingerprints are always there, even when it's not them that's, sticking a knife in your back or pulling the gun and pulling the trigger. But the fingerprints are there if you pay attention. And so I think it's important for us to pay attention to what's going on and not kid ourselves that, they're okay, but the other ones are a problem. And I heard some of that implied in some of the comments that I read. And I was like, yeah, we need to get it together. And the one last thing I'm just going to throw in here, because it kind of frustrated me. Someone said this recently in the video that I did about that the reality that women can be misogynist as well, because it's something that they are taught to be, and that we do in service of whiteness, white supremacy, and white proximity. Someone offered a comment basically blaming mothers for men being misogynist. And I had to shut it down. I'm going to shut it down again. I am so sick and tired of women being blamed for everything that's wrong with men in society. They ain't got daddies. They got daddies. And either the daddy's absence or the daddy's failure to model the right behavior is likely the number one reason why they're misogynist. The second part is that even when men are taught at home to respect women, they go out into the world, especially, I noticed it with my son when he went to middle school, and they start hearing different things about girls. And they start spouting the misogyny that they hear from their peers and that society expects them to spout. And I had to give my best efforts to try to shut some of that mess down when it came into my house. And one of the things I would always remind my son is, I'm a girl. Your cousin's a girl. Your grandma's a girl. Do you want people to talk this way about us? Treat us this way. If you don't, then you treat those girls, even when you think that they're doing something wrong or they're being wrong to you, you treat them the way you want somebody to treat me. You treat them with the same level of respect you want them to treat me, your cousins, your grandmother, your aunts. Always remember that if you don't want someone to treat us badly, then you need to respect women. Whether you agree with everything they do or say is immaterial. You still respect them. But too many of us as parents, mothers and fathers, don't pay attention when the misogyny is coming from elsewhere. But our society tells men that they're supposed to think and behave a certain way, especially heterosexual men, that they're not supposed to show their emotions, that they are supposed to treat women in certain ways, many of which are problematic. So even when you don't teach it to them, they still learn it, and then you have to try to catch it and unlearn it, help them unlearn it before it's too late. But to put that on women and say it's because they're mothers and their mothers don't like women is bullshit. I don't have any other way to put it. And please don't bring that kind of foolishness into my comments. Stop blaming women for everything that goes wrong in society, considering who this whole structure was created for and who are the real architects of our society. Stop blaming women for everything. All women, period. Stop blaming us. It's ridiculous, especially when other women do it. This is where I'm talking about learned misogyny, and this is a person who's saying they agree that it exists and then exhibiting the very thing that I'm talking about. Please stop being one of those people. It serves no one. It don't serve you. It don't serve your sons. It don't serve anybody. Cut it out. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope it's given some of you who watch it something to think about. I'm sure many of you will not agree with what I'm saying, will have issues with what I'm saying. That's fine. As long as your comments are constructive, it's fine. But this is my take and my thoughts based on my experiences and observations and interactions in the workplace with white men, that their hands aren't clean either. Their hands are the dirtiest of them all. And we really need to pay attention to that and not put them up on a pedestal and not fail to mention it and not fail to call out the foolishness when they do it. And as I said, you don't always see it right away when they do it because they're better at hiding their hand than most. But if you're paying attention, you will see that their fingerprints are present. So these are my comments. I hope that they were helpful. This is Anne-Marie, the anti-HR lady. HR is not your enemy, but they're definitely not your friend, but I am, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.